Okay, good. I think it's live.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So I was thinking, since this is altruism, it's sort of, and the question was, is altruism innate or is it learned? Um, and then sort of discuss the different sides, um, and then sort of starting from the book. And I was thinking maybe a good place to start would be, if we could go around and sort of talk about sort of where we're starting, like where we're coming into this from. It's like what do we guys think before? Um, like, what did you guys think about altruism? Is it innate or learned? Like before, um, either before the class or before we started reading, got to this section in the course. Um, I mean, I can start. Um, I I really thought that, like, I thought that it was, sort of both, like a combination of both. And for me, that was just because, uh, uh, specifically, like, from most, if not all, of the other child psych courses at the U, um, that I've taken, we sort of talked about how temperament is largely genetic and player in sort of how you look at the world, um, and then sort of a lot of it also is personality and sort of your ideologies and value systems. Um, so that's me.
Yeah, I was kind of the same way, Jordan. It's kind of like a political answer, but a little bit of both. I mean, just looking more at personal experience and the different people I know or that I've been in contact with, um, I think like a lot of it has to do with your upbringing or partly maybe your moral values, those core things that your parents instill in you, but yet at the same time people are brought up in that environment, and when they're older or later on, they make their own choices, and it may not be in line with those same type of things. So, and then the opposite too. People are brought up maybe not exposed to it as much, and yet are making choices that are right in line with the altruistic view. So beforehand, it was kind of a little bit of both, but I think I was leaning more toward the learned versus the innate.
Mhm. Yeah, I would agree with both of those. I think, it's like anything, it's an interaction of our genes and our environment. It's like going back to our discussion on the Chen article. Um, and just reading the textbook, there are these examples of it being there's a genetic component and there's an evolutionary component. But then all these examples of how our parents model it and our teachers model it, and this sort of pro-social behavior gets reinforced. So it seems like there's some sort of disposition for it, and then there's also the environment, and so the level of altruism anybody has is just kind of the combination of those coming together.
I agree. Coming into it, I kind of believed it was also a little bit of both. Taking other child psych classes, and this text as well referenced the babies, like the newborn babies, crying, other newborns crying, so that shows a sense of empathy. Mm-hmm. So which would lead me to believe that it's something that you're born with. But then when you go through the other examples that they talked about in the text, like Lauren and everyone else has discussed, that it's more of a learned behavior of what you're seeing and what you're modeling after. But I still kind of lean a little bit more towards something that you're born with, because if you have that innate ability and it just continues to grow, that to me signifies that it would be something you're born with and learned as well, but more born with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you talked about, Kelly, like the newborn infants, and then they also talked about like those twin studies that they've done and how those do show you know, the role of genes in both the shared and non-shared environments also, especially more with younger kids. But then, you know, they had that point like altruism, you know, that's like kind of the survival of the fittest, that it's biological, it's getting passed down, and those, that kind of that logic with it too. So I don't know. And then, you know, we read that article and that Multi that study, and it talked about there definitely was more with the parents that reinforced it. But again, like I look at that sample of the group that article was based on, and it wasn't probably, I don't think, the best sample that they could have had. Or I mean, it was middle class Swiss. They even remarked about that. So it talked a lot. I don't know. I think there seemed to be a lot more about the learned in the text and different things that supported that. But I like your point, what you said, that if you have it, you know, it's just more nurtured as you're growing then too.
Mm-hmm. And I thought that was interesting. Like one thing that the text mentioned specifically was about how, like it, because I remember the text talked about the sort of biological genetic theory that, you know, being evolutionary and empathy growing. Well, if you can, you know, see yourself with this, you know, baby crying and protect it, and, you know, if you can, you know, put yourself in someone else's perspective. But interesting. Oh, and that is going away from me. But it was saying something about, I can't remember what it said. The issue with it was. Away from me.
Yeah, I think the text. Oh, sorry.
What?
Oh, I just thought it was interesting that the text really swayed toward it being a learned behavior.
Mm-hmm. I noticed that too. There's a lot more information in there. They say here's what is innate, and then here are all the environmental things.
Right.
It's interesting.
Right.
I kind of refer back to, I think, even our first discussion where we talked about whether learning is kind of a gradual process or if it's more like steps. And in that, like, looking at it, it looks like it's real, like, steps and plateaus and levels. But if you're really looking behind the scenes, you see that continual growth. So I kind of reference it back to that as well, as if you're born with this certain level of empathy, and it just, you may not see it all throughout the childhood, but it's still there and it's still a part of you. And as it just continues to be nurtured and as you grow, that also will kind of reappear.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you can see that in young kids. Like I look at my preschoolers, or you know, in ECFE, there are some kids that really truly are very empathetic, and it's like they feel everybody's joy or pain or sadness or excitement. And then there's some kids that it's just they're oblivious. I mean, they don't realize that, oh, I threw that Lego at him and that hurt him, or why are they crying, you know. And I know the text talks about that, you know, like you had said, with the temperament a little bit too, but I would think that those kids that start with a more visible empathy, that reinforcement and that reward that they talked about with like that social learning theory, definitely plays a big part if they continue on like that or not.
Right, and I thought it was I can't remember what specific page it was on, but the book sort of about 2-year-olds, and I don't know if you guys heard that, but my mom's watching the Olympics down here, and something good happened. Here. Where was it? Oh, right. But it was talking about 2-year-olds, and how some, you know, you see some 2-year-olds that sort of look like they are more compassionate, and some 2-year-olds that sort of go into themselves when they see someone that's in distress. Um, and the book sort of one part of the book sort of talked about how that parental like the way that a parent and this is specifically like distress that is caused by the toddler, like how a parent disciplines that will shape sort of how altruistic the child, like a child who maybe is less compassionate, the parent says more just like don't do that, or that's but the child who is more empathetic, who is more compassionate, the parent deals with it more of sitting down with the child and explaining. Like I remember the example from the book was, "Stop that! Daddy is hurt. Stop that! That hurts, Dad. Biting isn't nice," or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Jordan, it was cutting out a little bit, but I think the point, part of what you were saying was like kids who naturally show that empathy that's going to get reinforced and really snowball, and then the kids who aren't showing any empathy, either the parents will respond that way, or maybe they'll just say, "Oh, that's how Billy is," and just leave them alone. So then they'll have less of a chance to get that fostered. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Right.
Yeah, it talked
Right.
a lot about how, a little bit of praise or how that can go a long way with this too, with kids, and even, I think not even just kids, but I think even, adolescents and adults too. I mean, if you're getting positive reinforcement for things that you're doing or helping, I think that encourages you to keep doing it. I think that's one of the reasons why I was thinking they talked about, like later in adolescence or early adulthood about the volunteering. And I was thinking about all the things now, like, National Honor Society, a lot of sports teams in high school do volunteer work. Of course, like a lot of youth groups do it. You have to, like, volunteer as a part of being a parent on your kid's traveling basketball team or different things like that. So finding ways, some of it's required volunteer, but at the same time getting kids that experience so they can, I don't know, maybe have that feeling or get that reinforcement. And so the hope is that will continue doing that when they're adults as well.
Right. I've heard too that on top of volunteering, a good way to foster altruism and empathy is just to talk about things beyond that. Like it's good to do the soup kitchen on Thanksgiving, but then year-round talk about what we have, what other people have, how we can help other people, how other people feel. Just kind of relating things constantly too. So just reinforcing that. I think what you're talking about, Tricia, is volunteering more than that. But I just remember this article recently. It was like once a year isn't enough. We have to go beyond that.
Right. Yeah. So do we have like a group consensus?
What was that, Tricia?
Do you think we have kind of a group consensus? I mean, I think we kind of do. It's kind of both, I think but
it sounds like everyone pretty much agrees that it's a combination of both.
Right. That seems like it.
It seems like a very politically correct answer, but it's the best.
Yeah.
It's how I feel. So.
Yeah. Well, that's what the evidence seems to be saying too. Everything we've read.
I mean, I think that also compares well with, you were looking at the continuous versus discontinuous debate, and the nature versus nurture debate. It sort of goes right along with those.
I thought it was interesting. They talked about collective societies versus individualistic societies, and how U.S. we are very much based, individual based, and like competition and success and different things like that. But you know, when you see like a natural disaster or there's things that like if even someone in like a small town, if there's a benefit or different things, it's amazing how people come together, and not that they're really getting a tangible reward or reinforcement for a lot of that. So that's kind of too where that more innate portion, I think, kind of comes in.
Right.
When you look at like an individualistic society versus, you know, a collective where that's the norm. I mean, they're focused on cooperation and group and helping each other out a little bit more.
Right.
That's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, Jordan, when you were talking about the example that they referenced in the textbook, I see that in my own kids. Between my 4-year-old and my 3-year-old, my 4-year-old has just, I think, missed the boat on it, but on the empathy aspect. But my 3-year-old will give you everything he has. You know, it's just if his brothers are upset or they want what he has, he just, if he's got 2 cookies, he'll give one to each of his brothers, and he just won't have one. You know, so it's just interesting to see. You know, it's the same parenting dynamics as well. So it's just interesting to watch that play out too.
Right. Anyone else is freezing up?
Sorry, my 4-year-old's having a night terror, so I'm just a little.
Oh,
Yeah. No, it happens a lot, but still stressful. Nothing you can do. Still stressful.
yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Well,
I thought it was kind of interesting. They just mentioned it like in 1 or 2 sentences when talking about who raises altruistic children. And I guess for me, growing up in a pretty religious household and having that as a daily part of my life and different things, you know, that's just part of that whole package is, you know, trying, you know, helping other people and, you know, being empathetic and that kind of thing. And in the text, they really just touched on that like a couple sentences. I thought that was kind of interesting because I think, you know, not that it has to just be Christianity, but a lot of religions, that's their base. And so I think that's where a lot of people might get some of their first experiences with it, whether they continue with that as a part of their life or not, you know, the religion. But I just thought it was interesting that they didn't really, they talked about it, you know, very briefly.
Right. And I mean, on religion too, you were talking, Trisha, earlier about sort of collectivist cultures versus individualistic. That's like, or at least from the way I understand it, from what I see, that's sort of like what you see in a lot of Eastern religions, like a lot of like Buddhism and Hinduism, is idea of altruism, an idea of just, you know, loving everybody, you know, and like having love for everybody and having that empathy, and just helping others, you know. Yeah. Does anyone have any last comments?
I think we covered everything.
Well, all right. So our last one, guys.
Yeah, so let's see. Let's stop recording.
Nice job.
Yeah.